tell me when I start speaking.
It's recording.
Okay, right. Hi, I'm Keith Gottschalk, a retired political scientist from the University of the Western Cape. I was head of department for a few years and a Fulbright scholar in 2010. Okay, your question?
And an ANC member too, right?
Right. Oh yes. I suppose it's ethics in terms of what the internet discussed to mention that I've been a member of the ANC since it was unbanned 26 years ago. I've been involved throughout my life in one or other anti-apartheid protests. My hobbies range from astronautics to poetry. For example, this is for mostly US viewers, I'm a member of the Planetary Society based in California. Okay, next question.
Okay, what do you think is responsible for the rise of xenophobia in South Africa?
You'll find that xenophobia exactly correlates with the income level and unemployment level in any neighborhood. So the riots and xenophobic pogroms have all been in shanty towns where about half the people are unemployed, very, very severe, and there's huge competition for jobs. There's also been cases of local shopkeepers, what are locally known as spaza shops, that is mama and papa convenience stores in shanty towns, have organized their pub drinking friends to riot and attack immigrant shopkeepers so as to limit business. When you move to corporate head offices or campuses, you find, of course, that there, where there is no unemployment, it's a status symbol. The more foreigners you've got among your circle of friends, look how sophisticated and cosmopolitan you are.
Why are so many Africans from other African countries working in South Africa?
Relatively speaking, South Africa is industrialized and a middle income country compared to its neighbors, which have devastating unemployment, far worse poverty and worse malnutrition. So for over a century, for example, huge numbers of Mozambicans and Basotho from Lesotho have come to work on the mines. In the colonial times, of course, the colonial authorities imposed taxes on Africans to force them to get paid employment because the colonial regimes got a cut from these wages. When Zimbabwe went through economic collapse about a decade ago, we had possibly 500,000 or 1 million Zimbabweans coming into the northern towns begging for work. And on a more selective basis, we have in Cape Town and over South Africa many Somali shopkeepers from a growing diaspora after 2 decades of their civil war. And locally, where I live in the suburb, for example, you will find that computer shops are run by Nigerians, by Somalis, by Congo Brazzaville people, and the foreign-owned businesses tend to keep longer hours. They open on Saturday or Sunday, whereas the locals are too lazy to do this, so it's very convenient for the local people to patronize such businesses.
What, if anything, is being done to allow foreigners to naturalize in South Africa?
Our regulations are that if you've lived in South Africa lawfully for 5 years, you may then apply for either a permanent residence visa, the equivalent to what Americans call a resident alien, or you may apply to become a naturalized South African citizen. So it's not as tough as in Germany there. Your paperwork battle is going to be getting the paperwork and the visas to be in South Africa lawfully for those first 5 years. Like many countries in Europe, they have all those sticky things that you cannot change a study visa or a tourist visa into a work visa. You have to go back to your country of origin and reapply there. And There the government has a list of scarce skills for which it will grant expatriates work visas. For example, astronomers is one of those because of the huge square kilometre array project. Whereas if you are an academic in the humanities, your university is going to have to really battle with its lawyers to get you that work permit.
How many South Africans have an idea about the role of other African countries in ending apartheid, or do they think they did it all themselves in South Africa?
It would be mostly elderly South Africans or middle-aged who were in exile or are political activists or intellectuals who remember how tens of thousands of ANC and a much smaller number of Pan-Africanist Congress and the ZAPO activists were in exile during the anti-apartheid 3 decades of those banning orders there. For example, Jacob Zuma was himself in exile, the current president that is, in Zambia, where he ran the military intelligence wing of the underground, and the ANC's largest training camps were in Tanzania, and its military camps were mostly in Angola towards the end after the government's attacks on ANC camps in Mozambique and Botswana.
But the xenophobe rioters then would have no idea of the role of, for example, Nigeria in supporting liberation movements.
No, none. Your rioters, remember, are working class people unemployed. Probably a majority have not got grade 12 from school. They will probably be people mostly under 40 years of age. The only persons who we know of, specifically Nigeria, in fact, as opposed to, say, the role of what we call the frontline states, the neighbouring states, would really be intellectuals and activists and historians over there. Thabo Mbeki, for example, was for some time stationed in Nigeria, that is South Africa's, Democratic South Africa's second president, but that role will be quite unknown to the average person on the street.
Moving to another topic, what has the ANC done to reform and improve education since 1994?
The first and huge challenge the ANC faced was that the public budget was organized in the apartheid way. That is, for any money spent per year per white child, a colored child would get about half of that. An African school child will be allocated about a quarter of that budget, and in the Bantustans, that is the enlarged reservations, the budget for a black school child will be less than 1/10 of the budget for a white school child per year. In the most extreme examples, the budget for sports facilities, for school libraries and school laboratories were 100-1 in their budget. So after a few years after coming to power, the ANC's major reform was on a sliding scale to equalize the public budget per school child per year. This meant slashing down the budgets of white schools, that were formerly whites-only schools, to about 1/5 of what they had been earlier, and reducing by about half the budget per coloured and Indian school child in order to raise up the formerly blacks-only schools, which were of course 9 out of 10 schools. It then redeployed the teacher posts from the white and coloured and Indian schools to allocate extra posts to the African schools. In your typical African grade school, there could be 50 to 90 children per classroom taught by a desperate teacher, whereas in the white schools there might be only 20-something children per classroom. The, of course, middle-class parents reacted to this by dramatically raising the school fees for the formerly white schools so that the fees would make up for this huge cutback in the government expenditure. Now, in my time, for example, as a school child, the fees in a whites-only school would be equivalent to $1 or $2 per year. Today, my old school, at which I go back, charges double the school fees from grade 8 that the University of the Western Cape charges to its students there. So it's now quite routine to be paying about, say, $2,000 per year, $3,000 per year in school fees at a grade school. And remember that the rand is the most undervalued currency in the third world in terms of purchasing power parity. So the equivalent in rands, 40,000 rand, is huge even for a middle class family. So what this means is that while school apartheid has ended, school segregation has ended, it is only the black business families and black professional families who can afford to get their children into the formerly white schools with their much better facilities, except of course for black school children who have got a bursary from grade 1 onwards to get there. So that has been the ANC's major reform. It has also hugely increased the budget for school buses. This is something extraordinarily widespread in the USA, but is extremely rare in South Africa, where the case was that white parents would drive their children and drop them off at work, the mothers, and the black children had to walk or take buses or trains. But in the rural areas, there's been a huge increase in bus transport. The last major reform the ANC has done is that the old apartheid regime had school feeding for poor whites, and about half of the budget per child was given to school feeding for blacks. When apartheid meant that there were virtually no more poor whites, the apartheid regime abolished school feeding in 1955. It couldn't care less if black children died from malnutrition. And a major reform of the ANC has been to reintroduce school feeding. So in brazen defiance of Milton Friedman, we are providing 6 million free lunches per day to black school children. And last year, the two wealthiest provinces, that is the Western Cape, meaning mostly Cape Town, and Gauteng province, meaning mostly Johannesburg and Pretoria, have introduced school breakfasts, because school children who are faint from hunger cannot learn before lunchtime otherwise.
Are South African students being adequately prepared for college?
There's huge disparities and inequalities in the level of teaching and in the quality of teachers. In white schools, for about half a century, it's a prerequisite that a school teacher must have a university degree. In colored and Indian schools, the prerequisite used to be that they only needed a college diploma, and in many African schools all they needed was grade 12 themselves in order to teach in elementary schools, as Americans say, up to grade 6 or 7. The apartheid regime set up a number of segregated second-class universities to train black school teachers, but basically a majority of black school teachers were only trained to teach through rote learning enforced by beating and caning in weekly tests. When it comes to problem solving, when it comes to encouraging students to do independent research projects on their own, very few of the children in black schools gain those sorts of skills, and this is why the maths results are so catastrophic in South Africa, because that is the one subject where, as opposed to rote learning, actually understanding the method of solving a problem is vital. So this is still a huge problem today.
What has been done to prepare non-college bound students for jobs?
Apartheid South Africa was utterly unique in the world in that the number of college places for students was half the number of university places for students, which is exactly the reverse of any other country in the world. The reason for this was apartheid was marked by all the artisan jobs, that is skilled blue-collar jobs, such as welding, plumbing, electricians, being whites only. Therefore, there were very few artisanal colleges or community colleges, what I think be the US equivalent, where blacks could learn for these skilled blue-collar jobs, and as opposed to a lot of universities which was training people to be clerks or school teachers over there. Now, after a series of renamings and reorganizations and reshufflings, the latest name for community colleges and artisan colleges in South Africa is TVET. The acronym stands for Technical Vocational